Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know Monday is a busy night at MIPTV, and it's an early start, so I'm sure the room's filling up still. So we're here this morning to talk about Spies of Warsaw. We've got a great panel. We've got some video to see as well, and we can throw it open to questions as well. So just let me do the introductions, and we'll get into it. So to my immediate left, we have Maciej Bernat, who is Head of Programme Coordination at TVP, the Polish public broadcaster. Next in line, we have Ben Donald. Ben is Executive Producer, International Drama at BBC Worldwide, which is the commercial arm of the UK public broadcaster, the BBC. Next to Ben, we have Dariusz Jablonski, who is the CEO of Apple Films, which made the show. And at the end of the line, we have Matthew Patnick, who is the line producer and head of production, or was rather, for Spies of Warsaw. Now, rather than me give an introduction to the show itself, given our esteemed panel, I think maybe I'll throw it over to Ben just to set the scene, read the story and the project itself, and then perhaps we'll have a look at a bit of video and get into some questions. So Ben, if I can throw it to you.
Is that working?
Yeah, you're on.
Good morning. Well, Spies of Warsaw is an adaptation of two of the books in the series written by Alan Furst, which are sort of historical espionage novels set in different parts of Europe in the years leading up to the outbreak of the Second World War. And Spies of Warsaw specifically features David Tennant playing the character of Mercier, who is a sort of military attaché stationed in Warsaw, who is a sort of lone voice who sees the tensions that are building up on the Polish border and has he alone has insight into what he thinks is about to happen when the powers that be back in Paris are more focused on sort of commercial ties and denying what's the inevitable war on the horizon. So it is part espionage miniseries. It's not a war film. It's pre-war. It's really a love story. He falls for a very engaging girl called Anna, played by Janet Montgomery, and they play out a story of trust, mistrust, betrayal against the outbreak of the Second World War. It was commissioned by Ben Stevenson for Richard Klein at BBC 4, and I think we have a short clip or trailer to show you.
Yep, absolutely. If we can see the video, please.
You've been over there a few times?
Yes.
Did you see something that made them angry enough to shoot you?
Soldiers with shovels and machinery.
What kind of machinery?
Moving the earth.
Who's the man fencing with your brother? Colonel Jean-Francois Mercier. He's a military attaché at the French embassy. He's only been in Warsaw 6 months.
The information I've received suggests to me that the Germans are preparing for a different kind of combat.
Is this another one of your gloomy predictions about the likelihood of war?
You are not what you seem, are you, Jean-Francois?
Are we to look forward to this in the morning papers? Try to remember, Colonel, that your function here is covert, which means we want to hear as little as possible about what you get up to.
I'm pursuing you, Alan.
You know my situation.
Yes, I do. You're in danger yourself now.
When can I see you again?
Maybe it's better if we don't.
I think it might be better if we do.
Hitler is intent on war. It's only a question of who he picks a fight with first. When I leave, lock the door behind me and don't open it for anyone.
Good stuff. So Ben, thanks for introducing it. Speaking to the rest of the panel, you're credited in in many cases, with being the person who made this an international co-production and helping to put those pieces in place. So in the first instance, what's the story? How did it come about, and how did you bring the international partners on board?
The show was produced by Fresh Pictures, a UK independent production company, and as is increasingly the case, a British producer will come to BBC Worldwide with a very interesting project that is greenlit by the UK broadcaster, but there is an economic challenge that faces how the thing is going to be financed and made. In particular, this is an interesting case because it's being a BBC 4 drama. It didn't benefit from, BBC 4 has a slightly smaller budget for drama than BBC 1 and BBC 2, so the challenge was even more acute. So I sat down with Richard Fell at Fresh Pictures, and we set out a strategy for where we were going to try and find the partners that would help piece this together. Now, the show's called Spies of Warsaw. It's set in Poland.
But that being the case, I don't think you had. Sorry to jump in, but it might seem now that there were natural partners, but I don't think you'd co-produced with a Polish partner previously.
No, I mean, I think the point is really that a period show like this might traditionally be filmed in a place in Dublin or Budapest or the Czech Republic, where there are rebate systems, but there are also a huge amount of shows, juggernauts like the Borgias in each of Budapest and Czech Republic, Ripper Street in Dublin. You have a problem of infrastructure and crews and availability, and those rebates aren't always as good as they seem when in the final reckoning, from sort of cash flow and administrative point of view. I had 3 years previously met Darius at a sort of one of these co-production summits, and we cultivated something of a friendship based on our love of Krzysztof Kieślowski's films. And Darius used to work for Krzysztof Kieślowski, R.I.P. And along finally came a project where it seemed logical to try and explore Poland as a possible shooting location. I knew I had some dangerous little knowledge that there was this huge infrastructure and technical expertise and great filmmaking tradition in Poland, and Darius had confirmed that. And we had these wonderful scripts written by Dick Clement and Ian LaFrenais, and here was suddenly a concrete opportunity to explore. But it was a question of, beyond Poland as a shooting location, could there be something which neither the Borgias in Czech Republic or Hungary seek to explore, namely the participation of the local broadcaster as actually a contributing financial and editorial partner into the show, as I'd done on previous co-productions. And so Darius and I set about a strategy to try and involve TVP, and we were delighted to be able to bring them on board at quite an early stage. We had one half of the show in the script, and we had several trips to Poland with Matthew, who'd come on board by this stage to research it from a sort of a location and a cost and a budgeting perspective, and it was very clear what the gap and the challenge was financially. Right. So we made a proposal to TVP, and we were very delighted that they came on board, and came on board with certain conditions in terms of sort of Polish elements and things, and that's the sort of typical challenge of a co-production. But I think we've come out the other side very successfully. And then
Maciek, I think it's probably the perfect time to jump to you. In terms of TVP's involvement, this was the first time this kind of deal had been put together, I think. And was it? I understand you championed the project to a certain extent. Did you have to really sell it internally? Did everyone get it straight away?
It's been first BBC TVP co-production for quite some time. Okay. I believe there were co-productions on a smaller scale earlier in history. But I claim I've been the original spy of Warsaw, because I've been parachuted into Warsaw by the BBC, who have cleverly let me go just 6 months previously after many years of loyal service. And I was working as a consultant for TVP, and on day one, script and idea landed on my desk, and I had to review it for chairman of the board. And what could I say but yes, go for it. So that was very fortunate. And then in my later in my executive role, I experienced some internal tension, because you see, Polish television, like many public broadcasters, under the pressures that they found themselves in recent years, has not had very good experience with foreign productions. So the case of
with acquisitions, with acquired
with acquisitions or co-productions, Poles just certainly public television, free-to-air audiences like what they know, and that's why we had to go beyond the Spies of Warsaw in the title. We had to have Polish element. We wanted at all costs to avoid the Argo syndrome. We come here for the desert. Would you like some local story as well? So. I was very proud to be able to champion it, as you termed it, and to be credited with part of with its success.
And Maciek, do we have to see it in a slightly broader context, in that not just TVP but broadcasters around the world, it's a challenging time in terms of putting budgets together and so forth. Is there kind of an economic imperative to reach out to partners in order to get these type of shows made, because it's harder to get the budgets together and so forth?
I can only speak for Polish public television. For us, it's very simple. It's a way of getting quality content on our screens. And the case with BBC is fairly simple, because most people know what BBC stands for, and so this wasn't such a struggle to get this project on the road. But I don't want to bore you with our financial problems, but public broadcasters in that part of Europe are not doing very well. So for us, it is not a question of saving our budget. It's the question of saving our mission of showing people varied and quality content.
And is there, or was there rather, any tension surrounding who owns the international rights, who owns the rights resulting from this? From a worldwide perspective, is a key part of this that you take the international rights and you have something to sell around the world? Yeah,
I mean, sort of banally speaking, the only point of me putting together a show is so that it turns into a distribution asset for BBC Worldwide. There are lots of models of co-production and lots of traditions of co-production, and I think it's fair to say that the Eastern European countries tend to come from a film perspective where there's a sort of an equity stakeholder mentality, which is totally justifiable, whereas in other countries it's typically just the license fee contribution for a period of time, and the rest of the rights remain with BBC Worldwide. I won't go into the details of our deal, but we had to make up some new rules on both sides in terms of accepting a different way of doing it. But BBC Worldwide still ends up with, essentially the worldwide distribution outside Poland.
Okay. Darius, you have a film background. You're known for your movie work. Tell me, how does that translate when you're working on a TV project like this? Is there a kind of film sensibility you bring to it, or?
The beginning of this show was at the film festival in Cannes, in fact, because I got an email from Ben he's going to make Spies of Warsaw, and if I'm interested in, my immediate question was where Warsaw would be shot. And Ben said in Budapest. I said, kidding, I can't. So that was my basic condition. But you know what? That was very good coincidence, because really I'm experienced film producer making co-productions for the last 15 years. We made more than 20 feature films, co-producing with many countries. And this combination, together with Polish television market, which is a very specific market, because we have still strong broadcasters financing their programs themselves. So Polish TV producers nor broadcasters are used to co-produce. So this combination of my experience as a feature film co-producer together with this fantastic project was like making first path with public broadcaster for this co-production. So we set up, as Ben said, we set up a strategy which was based on certain elements, and I have to say that we were very lucky because we made it based on this strategy. Strategy was to propose prestigious show, but with Polish content, with Polish talents, and also produced in Poland, and getting to the co-production packet of public broadcaster, because broadcasters in Central Europe and Eastern Europe, Ben can confirm it, when they are buying a program, they pay very little. But if you co-produce, there is a packet for co-production with Polish co-producers, with Polish partners, and if we go this way, that was effective. So finally, we brought to the budget something like 18% of the budget. And because it was entirely shot in Poland, I suppose that was some percentage because of the value, which we brought, being a very established producer in Poland and using our contacts, contracts, partners to bring the best to the production. And of course, there was no problem with crews, equipment, etc., because we have a very developed television market, but it is not promoted as a partner for co-productions because we didn't need it. We were just self-sufficient, in fact.
Matthew, you're a tremendously seasoned TV producer, and I know that you've worked in many international territories, as we were talking about that before the session. I think this is the first time you'd worked in Poland.
Yes.
How did that compare and contrast to, well, first of all, the UK, where I presume you do most of your work, and some of the other places that you've worked?
I think what was fantastic was the depth of experience and the quality of the crews in Poland were as equal to the UK.
Really, because I mean, sometimes I think, and certainly not you, but there is perhaps something of an arrogance from people in the UK who assume that they're necessarily the best, and there's a temptation to want to take all of the crew out.
I mean, we felt the way this would work, both from a production point of view and also from a language point of view, was to try and have key personnel from the UK, certain heads of department, but then I think we ended up having 10% from the UK and 90% from Poland, and particularly with our Polish DOP and what that brought to the project made a massive contribution, and I feel that paved the way to make a very successful production.
And you were shooting, on location. In terms of what's the situation with getting the relevant clearances and permits? Is that quite straightforward?
Very, very straightforward. I mean, what was incredible was you just go into the centre of Warsaw, into the old city, and you could put the camera down and virtually shoot where you wanted with the minimum amount of covering up or dressing, and the permits happened. If we asked for things, it's like with everything, you need to give the notice, but we managed to shoot where we wanted, and what we wanted, and when we wanted it. And it was just an incredibly fantastic experience.
And it was Warsaw, and there were some other locations?
Warsaw, Krakow, and Habówka for the trains, which again, just to be able to have control of a 1930s train for 4 days to do what you want when you wanted it.
The show goes, normally from Warsaw to Paris to Berlin to Prague, the Alps. We did it all in Poland, and so it's not just Poland that it stands for.
Right.
There's lots of wonderful architecture from all sorts of periods that can represent different countries, and to have, as you say, that it's a BBC4 budget show with steam trains, car chases, aeroplanes, and lots of different costumes.
Right.
That was interesting, you know, what you teach me somehow, because when Ben, Matthew, and Richard came to Warsaw, we made location scouting to convince them that Warsaw should be shot in Warsaw. And leaving, they said, you know what, we will shoot here Prague, Berlin, and Paris. I said, you are kidding, no, it's not possible. And they said, we'll show you which way, and they did it. And it was another point of view on my city, which I was born, you know, to show me that has many possibilities. And together with municipality, which was interested in opening Warsaw, we had absolutely everything available. And frankly speaking, you know, with so much experience in international co-production, I have to say that this one was the perfect model, you know, the smoothest way. With friendship, you know, together with Matthew, we're analyzing, you know, the budget, every position in the crew, to explain to each other how two systems are working. So from the moment we started shooting, there was no conflict at all. Of course, minor situations as always, but full understanding and respect on both sides. How could come? I don't know.
That makes for a smoother panel session, anyway.
No, we can tell you something about some conflicts, you know.
But normally you have a situation where it's a British producer and a service producer,
Right.
whereas this is a co-production in the sense of two producers. I think that's quite an important distinction.
And that was basic condition from the beginning. What we
Darius wasn't going to do it otherwise.
But it worked. I mean, there was never any conflicts, both financially or editorially or from a location point of view. Everything worked and everything came together.
And Maciek, it's gone out now. So how was it received? As you were saying, local content is generally what drives the big audience numbers. Did this, you know, buck that trend? Did it?
We had to work. We did work very hard on promoting it. It was easier to promote it, given the fact that there were only 2 days difference between UK and
very
Polish
close to the
premiere.
UK.
So it was almost simultaneous, and that also helped. But I think the job of promoting it wasn't that difficult because of the Polish contingent in the film and behind the camera, Polish camera.
And Maciek, my understanding is that you know, David Tennant's a big star in the UK, and
David
I think
we call him.
David.
Yeah,
but I mean, he's very well known internationally, but not necessarily
no.
in Poland. So that wasn't the.
No, he has some female fans in Poland, but
and some more now.
The chairman of TVP's son's quite a big fan as well.
But thanks to Ben, among other things, he was partnered by Marcin Dorocinski, who's our answer to David Tennant. And
he's much more popular in Poland, actually.
Marcin Dorocinski plays, he was featured only briefly in the clip there, but he plays Mercier, so David Tennant's character, sort of long-standing friend who is somehow advisor, slightly spying on him, giving him the inside track on sort of on the politics. So he's a sort of an intriguing character. They have a sort of war history together. So he was TVP's kind of poster boy for the show.
And casting is, of course, always an interesting challenge with lots of partners in a co-production like this.
Especially between British and others. So that's true.
This was a very big challenge. This one, but you know, I always think that the best things about these co-productions is when you work, and even if it's at the 11th hour, you finally find someone, and and Darius, bless him, he put several candidates before
several. Everybody.
Producer, casting agent.
But out of those kind of constraints comes magic sometimes, and I think with each successful casting like this, or Matthew mentioned the DOP, every co-production, if it's successful, I think should leave a legacy where a new face or a new piece of talent on or off screen becomes almost like acceptable or legitimized for a future production. We had, in this show, we had the mother from the first series of The Killing, playing a sort of a countess whom a German spy, there's a German sort of guy who's revealing secrets to Mercier, and he comes every weekend to Paris, to Warsaw for a little fling with the countess, who's not really a countess. She's someone that Mercier set up as a countess, and she's played by I forget her name, but anyway, she's Danish, and I think she's castable because of The Killing. Marcin Dorocinski will be castable in future series, and the same is true of Sarah Martins from Death in Paradise or Caterina Marino from Zen. You know, these things it's a constant evolution and cross-pollination of new talents.
And Maciek, am I right in thinking that I think in the UK it was 2 parts, and that you, on TVP, you ran it as
4:45s.
Because that's just the format that works better.
That's the only way we could afford it, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
I don't think it damaged in any way the integrity of the show. We just had more the impression of having more of it, and we also dubbed it.
So we have the situation where it's shot in Poland with an international cast, but Polish actors speaking in English, being dubbed back.
And Marcin,
it truly is an international show.
They dubbed themselves.
Biggest problem we had with
themselves.
Marcin Dorocinski was that his fans watched very closely his lips.
Yeah.
So he acted in English. He then dubbed his English-speaking self in Polish, and it was a masterpiece.
But let me stop on this moment, because I suppose that was the biggest difficulty. The casting, and I have to say that I would like to underline, the importance of Ben, who is, maybe because of Kieślowski or Decalogue, he was very pro-European, and was pushing British colleagues, to be very open, because they say, okay, we can accept the condition, which is basic condition from my perspective and Polish TV, that we'll have Polish casts, but they have to speak English. So we have presented all actors who, to our understanding, they were speaking English, and none of them was sufficient in English somehow. No, but later on we picked some of them. But the biggest problem was third main role, which to the very last moment we had problem to cast with Polish outstanding actor but playing in English, and then there were proposal that maybe he may be British. I said, okay, but give me a good name. And we proposed a couple of good names, but none of them was famous in Poland. So we said, we can't, because we must have somebody famous in Poland, first of all. So Marcin Dorocinski was the last chance, because he was the only one who was not checked, because he was very busy. And it was 2 weeks before. That was the biggest crisis in our co-production, I would say.
But I think we had casting is often a huge debate, and is the place where people become most fearful of the old Euro pudding. But this was a very unusual show from a BBC or from a British perspective. It features virtually no British characters. There are 2 peripheral sort of dandies that you see in a restaurant in a couple of scenes, but essentially it's a French military attaché working with his French superiors. There are Russian dissidents, there are Germans, and so it was easier to establish a convention whereby, because what I mean by convention is rules that audiences can understand. Here they are in the middle of Europe with a bunch of people that are known to be of different nationalities, so they're not looking for a sort of a British accent consistency, because there's no one's trying to be British.
And then, Matthew, are there particular challenges in terms of, so it's an English language show, but I would imagine, signs, and are there kind of technical challenges
I think
that are inherent?
What was incredible was clearly the UK side of it. No one spoke Polish, but obviously everybody's in Poland, they all spoke perfect English. So it just worked. The communication side of things was never, ever an issue. And as again, if they didn't speak, say for example, I think the gaffer didn't speak English, but the best boy did. So there's always that line of communication. And then Wojciech, the DOP, obviously was completely bilingual. So there was always the flow of information. Call sheets, what was incredible was there was a crew of over 100, of which there were 13 people from the UK, but all the call sheets were in English, distributed in English, written in English by a second AD who was Polish. There was never any mistakes, and it just worked. I think obviously if it had been in Polish, I think we'd have struggled to get to places. But cars were there to take you. You were picked up, and you got. Warsaw was a very easy city to place yourself in and get to and from. So there was never any problem of people being lost or anything like that.
Ben, a wider point, do you sense that there's more opportunity now for worldwide, in this case, to work with broadcasters in territories that perhaps there are more options now in terms of places opening up that previously weren't perhaps open to co-production as much?
Well, I think there are lots of layers to the answer to that question. I mean, the location and the sort of whether it's a rebate location or a non-rebate location, sort of service co-production treaty side of things, I think there's a constant evolving sort of map. You know, there's a bit of Canada, there's Ireland, there's the UK obviously now with the tax credit. France is always upping its sort of tax credit thing. Every time someone makes a move in this country, you know, some government here does another counter move. South Africa, that's a given, I think, of productions, whether co-productions or not, in terms of where you shoot them for the best efficiency. I think
thinking editorially, creatively, perhaps.
The more interesting part possibly is, you know, typically one went to France, Germany, Spain, Italy, America, Canada for those license contributions. You know, Poland clearly bucks that trend as a very interesting new place, and we plan to continue the adaptations of Alan Furst's novels.
Really?
We're not we are not at as an advanced stage on the sequel as we were when we first came to TVP with Dick and Ian's scripts for the first adaptation, but we plan to pursue it, and there are two other major projects which we're already discussing positively as well. So, you know, the idea of this first co-production with TVP was the beginning of a sort of wider strategy to do more together. John Smith, the then CEO of BBC Worldwide, came out and sort of committed to paper with our desire to do that with Julius Brown, the chairman of TVP, I'd certainly like to do more with Darius, and I think Matthew's turned into a sort of honorary pole in the process. So, but you have to. It has to be a relevant project. I mean, there's no point me going to try and say, should we go and do Da Vinci's Demons with TVP? You could shoot Da Vinci's Demons maybe in Poland. That's different. Would TVP be a co-producer of Da Vinci's Demons? Very, very unlikely. I'd have to find something relevant.
And did you were you saying that one of the other first novels is the natural place to go next?
Well, he's written 10 or so novels. Whether one does a mini-series or whether you expand and take... You know, the challenge of his books is that they each feature different heroes and heroines, so you have to take possibly a slightly more lateral view. And do you bring Mercier back, and which of the characters stay, which go? How do you move it on? Those are some of the questions which we're in the process of asking and answering at the moment.
If Maciej would let me do that, I would put it...
I'll let you.
Thank you very much. That's respect and friendship. To put in wider context, because if TVP would be not willing to join the co-production, we have other very strong broadcasters, you know, because what I mentioned, we have a very strong television market, but we are self-sufficient. So this is, you know, a known land. But we have two private national channels. We have Canal Plus Poland. We have HBO. So there are a couple of other chances. And of course, public broadcaster is our first choice because we're working together 20 years, but having relationship with others. But what I wanted to say, what is probably a good climax for this discussion and showing the future, when Polish television broadcasted first episode, dubbed, thousands of emails came to Polish television from people asking for original versions. So from second episode, it was also broadcasted as an English version.
Oh, really?
And yeah, they wanted to do it because new generation is used to watch English-speaking programs.
We just turned on digital terrestrial broadcasting, coinciding with first episode. So from second episode, we added services, and you could switch dubbing on and off and have subtitles, and people preferred the original.
Interesting. And just a final one, Ben, just so I think, do we need to mention that there were other co-pro partners. Yeah, was Arte was involved, and this is just kind of for the record. And I think
just in
BBC
case
America?
they're in the auditorium. No, Arte. We have, we work with them on Parade's End. We work with them on Top of the Lake. They were a very important part of the jigsaw, both financially and editorially, on this, and also BBC America came on board as well for an important contribution. So it was as any co-production, it was a complex jigsaw.
Of course.
So thanks to them also.
Well, we're out of time, but really interesting and kind of quite a unique show, and it sounds like there'll be more UK Polish co-pros coming forward, so it's interesting to kind of delve into this one. So if you could join me in saying thank you to the panel for talking through that and explaining how it worked, and thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.